Hey there everyone, Afrodo Reviews here, bringing you another book to determine, is it worth reading over second breakfast? Or does it deserve the fiery pits of Mount Doom? So let's decide. Today's book had to come eventually. SWF, Trials of Fantasy by RLG. This is a self-published young adult novel out on Amazon right now for about $16 and was released on April 2nd, 2022. Making it exactly 4 months old as of the time I'm recording this review. It probably won't be exactly 4 months old when I release this, but that's not the point. Due to the young lifespan of the work and the fact that it is a debut novel from an amateur author, there is something I want to talk about, since it doesn't have much background to speak of at this moment. So I'm going to use this space to talk about something else and to make something pretty clear. This is a self-published work from an amateur author. This is a self-published work from an amateur author. Because of that, what I can say on this book will likely be heard by the author herself, and I want my criticism to be as constructive as possible. So I will be going a bit deeper into the issues I had with this book than I might otherwise with other books. Now, I am by no means an authority on how you need to write a book, so I also want to be clear that I am not giving this criticism with the intention of saying it's infallible, and that this is how you must write in the future. I just want to lie this out now and make it clear if I appear too harsh on this book, or trying to present myself as an undisputed authority. My intent is to be constructive and to give criticism where I felt the author could improve, as from a reader's point of view and from a booktube critic's point of view. I think I've been doing it long enough I can call myself an actual critic. In addition to that, about the time that I bought this book, apparently Amazon had the wrong copy up for sale, and I got a version that is rife with typos and spelling errors. So it's possible some of the complaints I have, which I tried to focus solely outside of the more grammatical and typo area because of that, but it is notable that some of the complaints I have may have already been fixed and is currently available in the newer copy available right now. At least so I've been told. The new copy is available without the typos, not necessarily that these complaints have been addressed. Let's begin. We begin where we always do. The cover. Now, the cover isn't anything special. I mean, it's not bad, but it doesn't really tell you much about the book itself. We have Paige in a silhouette right here, standing against a forest background as light filters in from the distance, cloaking her and her cat Banjo in a silhouette. This is kind of a bland cover, simply because I could probably take this and slap it on any generic fantasy novel and it would still work. And that's not necessarily bad. Now, I will say that it gives a very fantastical vibe to it, so you know this book is going to take place more in a fantasy element than necessarily anything else. But it doesn't necessarily speak much to the tone of the book, which was a lot more darker than this cover would imply. Let me put that this way. This is an amateur author. I know I said that enough. But it's serviceable. It does what it needs to do, but I think more could have been done to draw interest. I actually don't know when it comes to amateur authors who does the artwork, so I don't know if Amazon just has someone read a couple pages and be like, okay, there you go. The back has a little about the author section, and it has a small synopsis, which I've already read in my TBR. If you want to see the synopsis before me get into the review, please take a look at it now. Because of the nature of this review, there's going to be a little more spoilers than normal. Effectively, this does its job fine to get you interested, and that's fine because, again, it's a self-published work on Amazon, so I'm not going to be too harsh on it. Now, the basic synopsis of the story is that it's about a young teenager, well, not really young, it's about a teenage girl named Paige who is part of a family desperately trying to pay medical bills for her brother Kip, who is in a constant sickly state. Now, Kip is Paige's twin, though it's vague what he suffers from. I'll get into that more later. There is a surgery that we learn about later that Kip can get in order to have him live a more normal life. However, we learn that Kip is in such a dismal state that the years it would take for them to save for this operation, he simply just doesn't have. So, when Paige happens upon what is effectively an interdimensional Hunger Games that came to a city and is recruiting people, she throws herself into the games, hoping to win the prize money to save Kip and get him the surgery. From there, we see as she struggles to fight and to survive, eventually emerging as the victor. Now, for a premise, that's pretty solid. Now, I'm going to start with what I liked about the book. For the first part, I definitely liked how RLG was not afraid to hurt Paige. One of the things you notice with a lot of newer authors, especially authors who write young adult books, is that they feel like they're afraid to really challenge their character. Like, pulling back when it comes to hurting them emotionally or physically in the process. And this can often lead to some characters coming off like Mary Sue's, as they rarely seem to struggle with any event thrown at them, because the author is attached to their character and they don't want to hurt them. I can proudly say that this author does not fall into that. And Paige gets hurt a lot, emotionally and physically. Often enough that she honestly feels like she gets these wins when she earns them. Now, I'm going to have a little bit of a contradictory statement on this later, but I want you to know for the most part I very much enjoyed this. And the story itself is a pretty decent concept. Battle Royale fiction has really blown up since the Hunger Games came out. But we've seen so many versions that it can start to become bland and uninteresting. You see it a lot in games nowadays. Now every game needs to be a battle royale, but it's gone to such an extent that most people are just sick of battle royales. The idea of taking a battle royale concept, though, and translating that into a more dimensional thing where magical godlike entities are controlling the games rather than a government can certainly offer a unique perspective in which to tell the story from, and definitely expands the scope of just what is possible to challenge the people inside these games. We definitely get some good showings of it in what Paige has to go through during these fantasy trials, as no trial is ever as simple as just outlast your opponent, and that can add a nice, interesting layer onto the book for those who think that Battle Royale is getting a little overtrodden. Sort of like how Fall Guys, the game, made it more about winning mini-games than like all the other ones, which drop into arena, collect guns, and kill your opponents.
This is a Battle Royale game. We don't have weapons to start with.
What? Battle Royale?
Yeah.
Ah, like Minecraft.
No, like street urchins. We gotta land and we gotta find stuff.
Street urchins? Is that a game?
No, that's actually like real children that have to scrounge for stuff. That's what we have to be like.
That's a horrible game.
After that, unfortunately, we must move on to the rest of the video, which is the stuff I felt needed work. Now, the biggest issue I had with this book, personally, as I read through it, was the world building. RLG felt like she was really excited to tell this story, and you could definitely feel that as you read through the book. But it feels like she was so excited that she forgot to set the stage in order for the story to make sense. Some things I can forgive, like the fact that this is supposed to take place in the future, but nothing about the world really seems like it's in the future. It feels like our world today. Now, I may have misread that, and I will apologize. Again, this one is a tiny itsy bitsy complaint in comparison. However, there are things that RLG neglects to set up that are really vital. You have small things that, like the fact that it isn't about halfway through the book until you find out that Kip is Paige's twin brother. Up until that point, I thought he was a younger brother, and had to pause and blink when it was revealed that he was actually Paige's twin. Now, that sounds like a nitpick, but hear me out. The revelation completely recontextualizes Paige's fanatical devotion to ensuring Kip has enough money to do his operations and stuff. Instead of it being a big sister who with strong protective instinct over her brother that's causing her to selflessly work herself to the bone to ensure that he's as healthy as possible, now all of Paige's actions seem to be covered with that thin veil of guilt. She doesn't come off like a protective sister doing everything in her power. She's coming off like a guilty twin trying to make up for a prenatal crime that she committed. And this is also where this also comes in where Kip's sickness also, I felt, needed to be defined a little more. It's not. At one point, I thought RLG, about the time when she confirmed Paige was Kip's brother, she said that Paige stole nutrients from Kip in the womb, and basically led to what is known as twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. Twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. Apologies, I have a speech impediment, so saying stuff like that is not easy when I don't focus on it. Or TTTS for short. Now, for those of you who don't know, it is a rare pregnancy condition that affects identical twins, or other multiples of identicals. TTTS occurs in pregnancies where twins share a single placenta, or afterbirth, and a network of blood vessels that supply the oxygen and nutrients essential for development in the womb. Now, this results in a donor and a recipient twin, effectively. To simplify it down, Paige stole all of Kip's nutrients in the womb, causing him to underdevelop as a fetus. However, the issue with that is when I looked into TTTS, I found out that it can only exist in identical twins. And Paige and Kip are brother and sister, which means they have to be fraternal twins. Now, because of this, I was left in a confused state into just what Kip had. And then Paige's actions hinging on Kip's sickness, I did feel like I said, I did feel it was important that we should have at least had a very clear idea on what's wrong with Kip, which we don't. Another thing that started to grate on me with the world building as time went on is these games are very ill-defined. The games don't really seem to have any sort of set of coherent rules or nature to it. For example, Paige implies several times that the SWF, which stands for Sci-Fi, War, Fantasy, the 3 types of games that play, by the way, the SWF is moderated in some way. But the portals that house the game are said to basically pop up randomly over a city. And the way you get in is people just basically bull rush the portals and get dropped into a small arena where they have to make it to a designated safe zone before the pop limit is reached. Anyone who doesn't make it into that safe zone before the population limit is reached basically dies to all the dangers that was trying to kill them trying to get to it. So at that point it wonders, I wonder from there, how did they do the moderation process? It doesn't show, as far as I remember, it doesn't show Paige interacting with someone or anything like that. Paige doesn't talk about how there's a feeling like she's being examined or anything like that. There doesn't feel like there actually is a moderation process. It feels like a afterthought that RLG realized, oh wait, I need to explain how more kids don't end up in this. But even then, the more basic elements of the games aren't really fully explored. Like, how much money do you get if you win? How many winners can there be? Since the book starts with a recap of the previous war game, that it almost ended with a man bringing himself and a teammate home. But for the rest of the book, everyone acts like only a single person can make it out of the game. If that's true, then why would it be a big deal that this guy in the beginning almost got himself and a teammate home before dying? It wouldn't have mattered because he would have just had to kill that teammate anyways if those could only be one winner. Are there different rules between the 3 contests? Does sci-fi operate by different rules as fantasy? Does warfare have different rules than sci-fi? It's one of those. How many people can compete in a season? We're never given a hard number, and the only time we're given even sort of a hint of how many people there were, Paige is talking about how they've gone so far in the games that they're down to maybe 100, if that, and that's a significant drop from the amount of people that was in there. However, we're never given a hard number, so to us that means absolutely nothing. What are the general rules? How do they broadcast this when it comes to a separate dimension seemingly controlled by godlike entities? How do they ensure that these entities play fair? Because at a certain time, the Mama Bella, let's say the game master of fantasy, to use a D&D reference, effectively seems to actively target Paige throughout the book and creates blatantly unfair circumstances for several contestants.
Katniss Everdeen, with a score of 11.
Why do governments allow these extra dimensional beings to take what is, I can only assume, is thousands of their people into a blood sport where only 3 make it out on a regular basis? Well, there's a lot about these trials that just aren't answered and really need to be, because the more you think about them, the less sense they make. And furthermore, that does bring me to another complaint. Now, I acknowledge that this may be more personal, but I cannot buy that these games would be as popular as they are on a wide scale, simply because they're just cruel. Like, for example, in the third trial Paige takes part in, the characters fight against their fears. And at first, it seems like a more surface level kind of things, like one of the characters that she knew, Josh, has to deal with the fact that he's terrified of spiders.
Oh crap. Not good, ladies and gentlemen, not good. Okay.
And that can work. But no. It gets pretty intense after the spiders, as Paige is forced to confront the fear of her sickly brother dying in a hospital room before she can help him. Josh has to confront the fear that he left his pregnant wife behind to try to earn money in these games and will probably die before he sees her again. And then their teammate for that round, a Russian woman named Nadia, confronting what I can only assume, because it never specifies, but it gives hints, to be the traumatic memory or the fear of it happening. A group of people find, torture, and kill her girlfriend because she's from Russia and they really do not like homosexuality over there. So it's just one of those, I watch this, I read this, and I don't think people would enjoy watching this kind of stuff. And now before you respond with, well, we watch horrible things all the time on television, what makes this different? Or, well, it worked in the Hunger Games, why not here? Let me answer that. In answer to the first, when you watch a horribly violent movie like the Reservoir Dogs from Tarantino, or even something real messed up like House of a Thousand Corpses, there's that veil of fiction over it. We're aware as a viewer that when we watch it, none of this has actually happened. No matter how messed up it gets, we know that these people are going to go home fine, they're going to live normal lives, and in fact, they'll probably get paid quite a bit for being in this. We're not actually watching people being killed, and our brain knows that. This allows you to experience what would otherwise be a horrible thing without being considered a sociopath who gets off on people's torture. Again, your brain knows it's fake, so it's letting you get the enjoyment rather than telling you, yo, this is messed up, you need to do something. For example, basically, just because you like Reservoir Dogs does not mean you're going to hunt out a Red Room, which, I guess, from more simply, you're not going to go watch a snuff film. As for the second point, it worked in the Hunger Games. Yeah, but most of the people watching the Hunger Games aren't supposed to enjoy it in-universe. 80 to 90% of the people who are watching this are being punished by watching this. It's effectively the Capitol annually flexing the fact that they won their war. And now because you dared come against them, they're going to take 24 of your kids, make them fight to the death, and treat it like a joke.
If we just wanted to intimidate the districts, why not round up 24 of them at random and execute them all at once? Be a lot faster.
And even then, the Capitol is the only place that treats it like a genuine, yeah, this is fun. there is degrees of separation that they have to take. The Capitol greatly glamorizes the games for their citizens. To them, it's more like watching Survivor than it is a snuff film. None of their citizens have to go into the games. They only accept a certain amount of cruelty before they decide, you know what, this is a little much. As we're given 2 examples where the Capitol citizens did not enjoy the games being played. One where everyone was basically freezing to death because they set the match in a very cold environment. And another one where a contestant basically went nuts and started eating other contestants. At least as far as I remember. It's been a while since I've read Hunger Games, so... And even in the original Battle Royale book, this wasn't a game meant to be enjoyed. This was a program by the government to call out delinquency among the youth, or more accurately, to basically shock the youth into subservience. Based on the numbers in this book, thousands of people are killed every year, and often in horribly sadistic ways. Thousands of people watch their loved ones be brutally killed on live television. Somehow, it's widely beloved enough to the point that they show it in high schools. I just don't buy people would like this show at all. I would say that the 4th trial exemplifies this the most to me. Paige is turned into her sickly brother Kip as part of a trial where everyone ends up gender swapped. And it's not just that she was made to look like Kip, she's literally turned into him, meaning his poor health at all, and the fact that Kip's personality and brain keep trying to take over Paige. And she works with another contestant named Byron, who is turned into his 9-year-old daughter. And yes, her personality tries to take over him too. So effectively, for a trial, we're being asked to watch as a horribly sick man who can barely walk without struggling for breath and almost passing out try to protect a 9-year-old girl who has no idea where she is from a violent death in a forest as they try to make it to safety. Would you watch that film if you knew both those people were real and were actually going to die? The next thing I really want to talk about is the characters. Now, while certain characters are fine and done rather well in my opinion, like Paige and a couple of the contestants surrounding him, I found that the most part they weren't terribly engaging and many times sort of felt pointless. For the most part, if you weren't one of the main triumvirate, I don't think I could tell you much about any of the characters because they just sort of exist for a couple of chapters to make a point for RLG. Like Paige's good friend Lewis, who I think got one whole chapter before he vanished into nothing, has never been mentioned again. I actually didn't remember who he was until I went back through some of the pages to refresh myself. But he pops up and vanishes. There was also, I think the best example though of what I'm talking about is the rich douche, as I call him, that Paige meets it very early in the book. This guy is a class A misogynistic jerk who seems to get off on having power over someone, and spouts off some mild exposition about how the games give a massive monetary prize. Though, with as popular as the games are, and Paige basically has watched every game since because her brother loves them, I don't know how she didn't know that. However, he pops up twice, once on the subway and the second time where Paige works. So you get several showings of him, you get to see how bad of a person he is. Paige directly comes into conflict with him despite her better judgment. So there's a lot of setup for this guy, and you think, oh, okay, so he's going to get tossed in the games too and be a rival or a reluctant teammate that she has to work with in order to survive the games. But no, he just sort of disappears afterwards. As far as I know, he never makes a reappearance. If he did, it was so minor that I can't honestly think of it. Another particular problem I had with the characters is that, and this kind of stems back into Not Afraid to Hurt characters, but RLG tends to introduce characters for the sole purpose of inviting tragedy, but not quite putting enough effort into them to make it a real tragedy for us, the readers. For example, the character Nadia I mentioned earlier. She is a tough, independent Russian woman who Paige is paired up with the third trial, who she is forced to work with to survive. At first, she's standoffish and seems to value her teammates only as far as they're useful. However, as time goes on, she seems to have an appreciation for Paige, because Paige is smart and seems to know what she's doing. And we even get small hints of her backstory in the trial, which seem to imply that she's a homosexual in Russia, and her girlfriend was tortured and killed because of it. You do have the markings of a great character there. Only Nadia's killed off a couple of chapters later, when the Mama Bella of the trial, Mama Bella forces Paige to choose between her and another character Paige has made friends with for a while called Destiny. And of course Paige chooses Destiny because she's known her much longer and the two consider themselves really good friends. And while it is definitely tragic that this happened, it's hard to find it tragic on a personal level because I didn't know Nadia that well. I don't know her well enough to be really that sad at this choice. To me, the scene is sad because we lost a character with the potential to be an interesting mainstay. And it's sad because the main character, Paige, is being openly targeted by the game master, Mama Bella. It's not sad because Nadia died. We don't know enough about Nadia to really be upset on the level I think RLG wanted us to be upset. And at a certain point, these characters, the way that RLG seems to introduce them just for tragedy, also starts to teeter real closely to a trope known as darkness-induced apathy. Now, what this basically means is that so much bad stuff happens so often in a row that as an audience member, you start to shut off about caring about anything that happens because you're protecting yourself emotionally from it. Now, I never quite got to that point for me, but I got real close at times, especially around the time where Paige is betrayed by Destiny in the fourth trial, who basically leaves Paige to die as she is Kip and is basically gasping for breath on the ground. I just try to keep up with me. I saw that coming to the point where I'm just like, okay, another character betrays Paige in a stupidly selfish way. That actually brings me to my final note about the characters. One thing that does pertain to the characters, say, but isn't necessarily a critique only about the characters, is that everyone in this book that isn't Paige is almost stupidly selfish. Maybe it's the fact that me and the author have different worldviews when it comes to this stuff, but the amount of times people in this book make decisions that are the most selfish decision is ridiculous. Now, don't get me wrong. You can have selfish characters and they can drive the plot forward. But here, it seems like characters only make these decisions because they're the most selfish decision to make, even when it's obviously self-sabotaging for them to do so. One such example is during the second trial. Paige is teamed up with a trio of unknown people where they select tokens, which basically grant them a role in their little group and give them a job, so to speak. Think of it like you're the rogue, you're the fighter, you're the wizard, you're the etc. They are specifically told as they choose these tokens that all of them have the power to protect, but only one of them has the power to save, which is a clear, you need to stick together in order to beat the trial and all of you survive. So what's the first thing that happens when the trial starts? Well, obviously two of the teammates decide that her and the other teammate are useless dead weights on them and abandon them in the forest. The games almost seem to be based around working together quite often, if not outright punishing those who don't work with their teammates by, they're gonna die now because they can't get past this barrier without the teammate they left behind, then it incentivizes working together. Yeah, you don't have to work with your teammates, but if you do, you get to stay in this nice cool cabin for a bit, which is a lot more comfy than sleeping on the ground where everyone else does, huh? It just doesn't make sense that everyone is that selfish. At times it feels like they only act this way so we can see how truly selfless and good-hearted the protagonist is, even if the selfish decision doesn't make sense. So, all in all, I think the book is good concept. And there's definitely something here But to me, this reads more like a first or second draft that got published rather than a final work. And I mean that in the sense of how the story plays out and the more general complaints that I have rather than the typos and the grammar errors I noticed in this version. If I have one bit of advice for this author in the future, is to take a fine comb and go over your future works. Go over the future works, especially when it comes to world building. Iron out the details to your world. Make it seem believable that this world exists in the way that it does, and then try to get the necessary information to your audience so they too understand why this world works this way. Try to see if you can take away your own personal knowledge of why this is happening and see if it would make sense without that, based on what you've provided. And if you really can't do that, get a friend and have them read through the book as a beta reader, telling you some of the issues that you might overlook because it seems obvious to you, the author. It's kind of like how a puzzle designer will always see the puzzle solution as super easy, even if it's actually really complicated. To them it's just easy because they already know the solution. As it stands, I don't think this book is very good. Personally, I have to give it a 4 out of 10. Now, again, take into mind that this is a self-published work on Amazon by an amateur author. This is an author who's taking a step into the pool by leaping into the deep end to get used to the cold. While they may not know how to swim now, they can always learn in the future, and it's important to applaud the attempt. It's for that reason, despite its low score, I don't think it deserves Mount Doom. And I'm just going to be setting it to the side for now. I will keep an eye on the author, and I hope she improves with the following works. But as it stands now, I can't necessarily recommend picking this book up unless you really want a story about a Battle Royale-esque game and you want some more interdimensional stuff tossed on top of it in order to make it interesting. You know, it occurs to me that this is the most recent book that I've reviewed on this channel. You know what? I think I need to balance it out. It's too new. My average book year must be like 2010 now, and I'm never that close. I need to rebalance it. I know it. I'll read Carmilla. But until then, remember, with every book comes an adventure, and every adventure is worth having, even the bad ones.